Test, 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 test. You guys can hear that? Test, 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 test. Okay, friends, we're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming this morning. Today is Grandparents' Day. Yay! So we're going to be celebrating that with our amazing panel. And so I just wanted to say a quick word about what Grandparents' Day is, because I didn't know. It was a proclamation that Jimmy Carter signed on August 3rd, 1978, declaring the first Sunday after Labor Day as National Grandparents' Day. It was a significant milestone as it recognized the contribution of grandparents to families as well as to society, and it was aimed to combat ageism by fostering respect and appreciation for older generations. Grandparents' Day serves as a reminder to honor and cherish the wisdom and the love that grandparents provide, not only to their own grandkids, but to the community at large. It's celebrated with various activities. Did you know that there's an official flower for Grandparents' Day? I didn't either. Anybody have any guesses? It is the forget-me-not. Yes, which look, I have forget-me-nots here in honor of my family. Yeah, so forget-me-nots. And there's even a song, an official song, which I listened to and was not a fan of, but that was just me. It's a song for Grandma and Grandpa by Johnny Prill. I had never heard of it before. So I was like, okay, there we go. So that's a little brief history about how Grandparents' Day became a thing. But I just wanted to have these amazing women here because I think grandparents and elders are such an important part of community. And I know that my life was shaped so much by the influence of my grandparents. And I moved out here for grad school and ended up staying longer than I planned on. And so I joke we're in like year 20 of our 3-year plan of being in California. And my kids have grown up away from their grandparents, and there were times when they were little that I thought, like, I just wish I had somebody that I could call and say, can you please just come watch them so I can take a shower by myself, And it would have been so nice to have, somebody older and wiser in my life at that point who was proximate, who was close. And so I think the importance of intergenerational community cannot be overstated. And so I hope what this does is inspire you and maybe spark a larger conversation around what intergenerational community could look like at All Saints moving forward. Because it's something I feel very strongly about, and I think it's something we all feel passionate about moving forward. So we're going to talk about the legacy of grandparenting through the lens of love, through the lens of faith, and through the lens of presence, and what legacy looks like to each of these amazing panelists. So I think you know everybody here. We have Carol Wallace, yay, and Alma Stokes, and MaryAnn Ahart. Thank you. Thank you so much for being willing to share. And so on that note, I'm going to be quiet, and they're each going to speak for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for some discussion after that. So without further ado, I'm going to let MaryAnn is going to go first.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you, Amanda, for putting this together and starting this initiative of intergenerational work. I really appreciate that. I get to talk about love. It's like the best. Back in the 1960s, I was teaching a theater class in improvisation, and we sat around a fireplace, or a campfire. Each student was to tell a story that was important to them, a strong memory, a strong image they had from their childhood. And I remember forever that the kids who were really emotionally sound, who were just really good kids, every one of them told a story of a grandparent, a neighbor, an elderly neighbor, or a friend, all generation of grandparents who saw them, who loved them, and who believed in them. And that became my mantra in the 2000s, early 2000s, when John and I started to have, we became the Nana and Papa team. That is what I want to remember as a grandparent. So my mantra was, let my grandchildren know that I see them, I know who they are, and I believe in them. Closer. I'm going to swallow this. Okay, good. All right. So, not without a few challenges, and Amanda asked us to talk about challenges along the way. The first is that most of their lives we've been at least 3,000 miles away from them, and that's a huge challenge because I never believed that would happen. I envy every grandmother who gets to have milk and cookies after school. The second challenge is, John and I were talking about, how do we talk about this? My grandchildren had other grandparents. Can you believe it? And and they were an influence in their lives, and they had values that were not our values, and they saw them more than we did. So trying to follow my mother's example, which was you always support the parent's decision. When my children were born, she bought all of the parenting books at that time, so she would know how to support the modern mother, which I loved. But our grandchildren in Vermont are being raised by a father who loves them, who was raised a hunter. And two of our grandchildren are hunters. And they had to learn that there was going to be no present under the Christmas tree from Nana and Papa in the shape of a rifle, no matter how much they wanted it. So we had to learn how to say, here's who we are, here's what we believe in, and we don't denigrate who you are. My daughter and I did negotiate when we would show up so there would not be another deer hanging from a tree when we got there. Right, that was for John. Another challenge was being a step-grandparent. Are any of you step-grandparents? And figuring out who my place is in life, because they had other grandmothers very much alive and very much loving them. So just figuring out who that was, and I love them, I adore them, I still enjoy them. And I'm MaryAnn, I am not grandma. And so, we had to negotiate that. The other thing I had to learn about being a step-grandmother was that sometimes Kip would say things that I thought were hilarious, and it wasn't until I was laughing out loud that I realized that parents thought it was inappropriate. But I learned. Now, on to love. When you hold a baby in your arms, they have a way of crawling into your heart, right? So love gets to be pretty easy. It showed up in so many different ways. I talked to my daughter on Friday, and I said, so how would the grandkids know that I love them? And she went, Mom, hours and hours of art with them and playing games. I said, okay, but do they know that I love them? And she said, yeah, they do. I sent more art supplies than any grandmothers to be allowed to send in the mail. I celebrated with them when they were honored for their art. I just got a text from my 14-year-old saying he had just spent 10 hours on a pencil drawing of a bass. He's a fisherman. And at different times in their lives, like buying shells and fossils and gems, whatever that was, and then one who wanted anything with a sloth on it. It's not that easy to find things with sloths on them right now. And another one wanted soccer equipment, but being very specific about who they are and what they wanted. So two of my favorite examples of what love looks like. One was aiding and abetting the rescue of frogs that had come onto the cover of the pool at that time. And this was very too soon after my knee replacement. And capturing them in a bucket, and my grandson and I went down a steep hill, across the road, down an embankment to save the lives of these frogs. And I kept saying, honey, I don't think I should be doing this. And he kept saying, no, Nana, you're okay. You can do this. Well, he's 10. He must know, right? So, yeah. And the other one, which was just very direct, this grandson lives in Vermont. My California body was lowering itself into their pool way too early in the season because Nate wanted to swim and he had to have a parent there, someone there. And I said to him, Nate, if ever in your life you say, do you think Nana loved me? I want you to remember this moment. I am getting into this friggin' pool with you. And he splashed me, I think, as a thank you. In less obvious ways, 2 of our grandsons are ADHD, arguing for them, supporting them, reading everything I can, talking about executive function, talking about seeing them for who they are. We now know that one of them needs us to leave him alone. So we can say, hey, we love you, and he's going to go off and do his pacing for an hour. He's going to go lock himself in his room. He just needs to know that we're there and we love him, and we have to learn that. Life lessons that I want to be sure that my grandchildren know, and especially because the first two were ADHD and are not what we call convenient grandchildren, right? Is you have to know who you are. That's your life journey. Figure out who you are, and then be the best of that you can be. And don't let other people tell you who you are. And sometimes that means intervening with other people in the family who say, you should parent this child the way I parented my child, having no clue what the difference was between that kind of parenting. Okay, last things, legacies. My mother was a strong, quiet, but resolute woman who was very into, this is in the 40s and 50s. In Ohio, we had migrant workers who came up from the South. She was an absolute advocate for the migrant workers. She fed the people who came in from the woods behind us who had no home. If they showed up on our back step, they got soup and sandwiches. She was that kind of woman. As a result of that, I ended up in the inner city of Cincinnati for 3 summers in college, and that changed my life. And I became very active in social justice. I raised my children in Vermont where 2% of the population is non-white. It is very hard to have incidents come up in that where they just sort of course, that's what we talk about. And it was the 80s, so there wasn't a lot of LGBTQ discussion at that time. However, my kids knew what I believed in. They knew how resolute I was about social justice. It makes me so happy to hear my daughter, who's now a professor of nursing, talk to me about how she talks to her students about LGBTQ patients and what they are to do to be kind to them and what they are to do to be sensitive to them, what they are to do to be, how they're to handle racial situations. For me, that's my legacy, right? My mom, I'm a strong woman, my daughter's a strong woman. She has 3 sons, and I can only hope that because of her legacy, that she passes that on to them. I think so. We listen for that, right, John? They're not becoming conservative, are they? Okay, no, I think they're okay. So, I hope they know that we see them, that we love them, and that we believe in them. Thanks.
Before I start, I'd like you to know that I'm going to read I'm going to read what I'm going to say because I go off on tangents and things like that, and I want to stay within the 7 minutes. Okay, and as a grandmother, I have played all kinds of roles, and I've been in their lives as much as possible. And as a grandmother and a teacher, I've collected other grandchildren, and also my nieces and nephews have become my grands. And I never had any grandparents at all, and so this was really important to me. And everything that happens as a grandparent isn't always rosy. There are tough times, there are situations, but God in the mix, love and joy reign supreme in my life. I have 9 grands, 6 more I've gained from marriage, 5 great-grandchildren, 28, 12, 3, 2, 1.5 months. My first granddaughter, Samantha Dixon Stokes, that's my daughter Karen's child. She lived with us when she was 2 months old, and then different times. And when I was teaching in Elliott, she had to go home with me, so I involved her in all my after-school activities and others. And I taught her how to speak and how to be in speech contests and things. And she would always be in competition with this young man, T.O. Hunter. He would always get first place, and she'd get second, and it always bothered her. And she has used him later on in her programs. Anyway, now her jobs are global. She puts on programs all over the U.S. and the global. She said, I inspired her to serve our community, create positive social impact in our world. And she grew up here in All Saints from the time she was 3 years old until her first year of college. My 7th granddaughter is Bailey Michelle Stokes. Her father was Maitland Stokes. And I forgot to say Samantha's mother was my daughter Karen Stokes that used to come here to All Saints. Anyway, Bailey Stokes, any activities she needed here in Pasadena at Pasadena High School, rides for her and her friends, water polo especially. And then in middle school, she came here and she worked with Chris Freeland. And Chris taught her how to do church signing. Then she helped her grandmother, Charlene Albee, up at Westminster Church doing signing. She lives in Mesa, Arizona, and with her husband, Devontae, and she has a child, Harper. And when she lives in Mesa, Arizona, and she came to All Saints to have her baby Harper baptized. And when I asked her about her faith, I asked her about her grandmother and what I'd been to her and stuff. She said, I helped her find her faith. Then I have Reuben Martine Stokes, number 2. That's Reuben 1's son. They have always lived distances, and he was born in Laguna Niguel. Then they moved to Naperville, Illinois, and they were 4 years. Then when he was 4 years old, he moved to Weston, Florida. I always visited everywhere they've been for long periods of time, so I knew my kids. And at present, he lives in Orlando, Florida, with his wife, Taylor, and new baby. And Taylor, his wife, is finishing her orthopedic surgery. And so they are just wonderful parents to this new baby. They've planned, I can't tell you how much. And he was president of Florida State College. And when he was one of my birthdays, he said, I don't want one of his birthdays. He said, I don't want you to give me a birthday present. What I want is for you to let me have Story Untold, write a book about your life. And then I have Alvin Ayala Garcia. His mother was my student when she was 12, and we stayed together through the years. Other reasons why. And I was with him when he was born in the hospital in Las Vegas. I babysat him because his mother had to work that day and his father had to go early. And I was visiting, so I volunteered to babysit. I had everything I needed. And Daddy left, and Alvin started crying. Nothing would help him. He milked nothing. He just cried on and on. Finally, I got tired. And every time he started up, I imitated him. I cried just like him. And you know, he knew that. He was like 18 months, something like that. And he didn't like it. And I kept on doing it until he finally shut up and he went to sleep. One of my first grandson was Casey Stokes, but he had other grandmother and grandfather, the Albies, here in Pasadena. So we had to share. But I never missed a school activity he was in, and especially football. And his daddy was the junior varsity football coach at one time. And he has a son, Keaton. And I chauffeured Casey's friends all around Pasadena. And so he lives in Camarillo. And some of my other grandchildren that I need to just tell you about, I have Kendrick Robinson. That's Mila and Kelly's grandchildren, Mila and Kelly's son. And he grew up in San Diego. And he lives in Houston, Texas, and he has 2 children, Temple Robinson and Cyrus Robinson. Then I have Reuben 1's child, Blair Stokes. She visited All Saints recently. She hadn't been in church for 5 years, but she grew up active in the Lutheran church where they lived in Florida, and she lives in Seattle, Washington. Then I have another grandchild, Karen. She's Karen Patterson Gaskin, and her mother was Patricia Patterson, and she raised Karen in San Diego. But my mother was raising Patricia, we called her Patty, and when my mother passed in '79, Patty became my child. I put her through school, college, everything else, and she had 2 children, Karen and Jacob. Karen is married to Aeon Gaskin and her baby, Bijan. Now, and then Jacob Patterson, the sum you lose. Anyway, then the last one I want to talk about is Antonio Ayala Garcia. He's 24, and he lives in Las Vegas. He's not married. That's Rosa's other son that I mentioned. I tried to give you a little bit of my life. There's a lot more to it.
Thank God. There better be more life to it. How would you like to follow these 2 ladies? It's not easy. Oh, okay. I have lipstick on. All right. I'm going to follow what this wonderful Amanda has done here. What legacy means to me is physical and emotional presence. That was as simple as I could get. And then we've talked about the joys and the challenges. I have 3 grandchildren, 2 girls and a boy. And I have 2 daughters. Emily, who is Aiden's mother, and a lot of you know Aiden here. He would come to me with a church a lot because they lived in San Diego. And my daughter, Jenny, who lives in Irvine with my 2 granddaughters, Ella and Eden. They have been my joy from the moment they were born. Ella was born on Thanksgiving Day. And I used to call her my little butterball, but of course I can't do that now because she's 11 and would not take that well. Part of the challenge for me with the girls in particular is letting them grow into, their tween and teen years. They're 11. I have 2 11-year-olds. My daughters were pregnant at the same time and had my babies 5 months apart. And then Eden came 3 years later. And it is a challenge to let them grow and not be those tiny little cuddly things that we spent so much time with. I did cheat a little, and I did ask my girls to give me some input about what they thought. I'm not very techie here, but we'll try. I'm not Susan. What they thought. And Emily asked Aiden what my legacy would be. And he said to her that I'd passed along wisdom and life's lessons. He's 10. that you helped him learn to read and climb trees, and you always gave him love and support. And you're a good role model because of your generosity and loyalty to your loved ones, but also your friends in the community. Can I say one bad word? And then he said, and she taught me the word jackass when you yell at people when you're driving. So I have to be truthful, okay? Yes. Another story about Aiden. Oh gosh, okay, this is hard. I don't know how you priests do it. The other part about Aiden that was so wonderful, about 3 years ago, they had water balloons out on the lawn, and he went home and told his mother that nobody got hurt because there was holy water in the balloons. So we do make impressions, okay? And then my Jenny wrote, her cute face. I know, I'm just carrying on. Sorry. She wrote, I think part of your legacy to the grandkids is the fact that you're able to give them the ideal grandparent relationship that you did not get to experience. The girls got to experience your church community that they wouldn't have gotten through Ben and I. They like crafts and Sunday school. I used to take them before my dear darling friend Ann and I got together. I used to go once a month to St. James in Newport, where Cindy Voorhees is the priest. And so they did Christmas there, Easter, the flowering of the cross and all that kind of thing. So that's what they brought. And now the difficult part of their grandmother is, most of you know, I lost my son 4 years ago. And it was, the phone call came in on Ella's 7th birthday cul-de-sac party in Irvine. I'll be okay. Hold my hand. Anyway, and I got the phone call in the morning, and we continued to have the cul-de-sac birthday party because she was 7 years old, and the word had gotten out, and it was like the Rose Parade. Cars just kept coming, supporting us all. So my job and my legacy is what is the most important to me, is I knew instantly I had to stay strong. I had no choice. How do you explain death to 2 7-year-olds and a 4-year-old? And you know you have to do it after the party. So we talked about it. My girls asked me if I would try to take the lead here because I go to church every Sunday. Like, that's going to make it easier, right, Tim? Anyway, and I kept it very simple. And I prayed very quickly and just saying, give me the strength to make this simple, understandable, and that they're going to be okay. And I think we were pretty successful at that. They wanted to know if he was sick, and because they didn't know that he was sick, they did not know. And I said, well, he had a sickness in his heart, and that's why we didn't know it. And then I realized that the way to get through this with them was consistency. So I came down to Irvine, drove down from here every day, took them to In-N-Out Burger, which they loved, and they're vegetarians, so if there are any vegetarians here, you can go to In-N-Out and get a cheeseburger. Just let you know that. Claire's Boutique, which is a mecca for little girls, where they can buy anything. And just let them know that he was watching over them and all of us. And little Ella then saw a hawk in the sky about a week after John died and said, Grammy, you're right. Look, there's Uncle John. He's watching over us. And it was so joyful. And she was smiling and she was happy. And so that's how, that to this day, that's what happens. So they're wonderful children. I love them with all my heart. I have a cute story about Ella. It was the end of the school year. this last June, and she and her sister, I picked them up from school, and her sister is 2 years younger. So I heard Ella talking to little Eden about somebody that was mean to Eden that day, and she was giving her sage advice, little Ella at 11. And I was listening to it, and my heart was happy because she was saying so many lovely things. And then she said, well, Eden, if that doesn't work, tell Grammy, she'll fix it. And so I knew that made my heart just beyond happy. My children and my grandchildren were raised in a half-gay family. My brother was married to my brother-in-law, and so they never knew anything but inclusivity. And then that was my brother's gift to me and to the family. And so they will pass that on to their friends. They always talked about their uncles, and they're a gift. And what else do I need? And the bottom line is love, and understanding. They have good hearts. They've suffered something we would never want our children to suffer at such a young age. But I think we've done a good job. They processed it, and they now know that life isn't always good, that there are sad times and there are difficult times, and they're indescribably difficult times. But they're fine. They're good. They're moving forward. So we need more holy water balloons, Amanda.
Thank you so much for each sharing a piece of your story. I know you all have so much more stories to share, and hopefully we'll get to hear more as we move forward in discussions in the future. I just want to share a quick story. I grew up in Tennessee. All of my grandparents were in Michigan. But my parents were intentional about phone calls and trying to keep us connected. My dad's dad was a pastor. So anytime I had a question, so I grew up Southern Baptist, where you go to church 4 or 5 days a week. So whenever I had questions, my dad would just say, well, call your grandpa. So I had a lot of phone conversations, and then we would vacation in Michigan and spend time. But when I was in high school, I moved back to Michigan, and so I got to see my grandparents more. I don't think I articulated as a young adult. I was sharing this with them earlier, and they said, you gotta tell this. I don't think I articulated as a young adult how much I appreciated my grandparents. And so that's great to hear that your grandkids already are sharing that with you. I knew that my grandma and grandpa got up every morning at 6:30 a.m. and they spent the first hour of their day in prayer together. And they prayed for each and every one of our family members, each of my cousins by name. And I did not fully appreciate that until they were gone. And I remember crying and calling my dad and saying, who's going to pray for our family now? And it didn't hit me until that was gone, how much I took comfort in that, how much I knew that no matter what was happening, I knew someone was praying for me. And I knew that my grandparents were lifting up our family. And it just brought me so much comfort. And so I just want to encourage us that whether we live far away or close by, that relationship is important, and that those values get passed down in ways that you might not even know. And so as I'm raising kids, my kids lost their grandmother. My mom passed away. My youngest was 5 years old. So talk about having to talk about death with young kids. It's so hard. It's so hard. And, but it's part of that legacy of life. It's part of the journey of life, and to be able to share that together and to journey through that together is so special, and they're so lucky to have you They're so lucky to have you. So I would love to just take a few minutes to just talk about how we as a parish, how we can envision being more intentional about intergenerational community moving forward, and how, my youngest daughter Willow, or my oldest daughter Willow, some of you know her, she is in Holy Rakers, and that has been a community for her of older adults pouring into her life. She does not have grandparents around. She does not have a lot of elders in her life that are here. And so that community has really come along around her and loved her and shared with her and poured wisdom into her life. And how can we as a parish look for more opportunities? How can we be more intentional? And then what are some things, some lessons that you have from your family or that you're trying to pass on to your family? So 2 questions. Feel free if you want to answer either one of those.
Ed Bacon talked about glory attacks, and when you have, it's not epiphany, I epiph'd. So I'm in the Sacred Ground group. We've been reading and seeing a lot of things about intergenerational racism, the trauma of having it can go 14 generations, they say, and if your great-grandparents suffered trauma, some of that is on you. Listening today and thinking of my grandparents who died when I was too young, what grandparents are for is intergenerational healing. The nurturing, the understanding that your grandparents have that your parents don't quite have is what allows us to not fall victim to the intergenerational trauma. And lots of people in our family tree that were not nice, not necessarily comfortable to be around, but Grandma Riley was the balm for that. And I know everybody here has it in them to be the kind of person that makes up for the bad things that bump up against you. So there's hope. I just had a little moment where things are not as bad as I thought, because we have lots and lots of matriarchs and patriarchs. So, and yes, we got to get us all mingled together.
Anybody else?
Amanda, I'll prime the pump a little bit and ask if you would say a little bit about a program that already exists as we look at what we might also build out, but the Seekers program coming up and the opportunity for people intergenerationally to serve as faith partners in that work.
Thank you for that plug. That's great. Yes, so Seekers, I'm sure as many of you know, is our youth confirmation program that starts in October that Jonathan Stoner and I will be running together. So it's a time for 10th to 12th graders who want to explore their faith, what it looks like, what they believe, what they don't believe, and at the end of it, they get to decide, do I want to be confirmed or do I not want to be confirmed? And part of that journey is having a faith partner. So faith partner is somebody who's a little bit older, a little bit wiser, who can walk along with them to listen, to reflect back to them what they're saying, who can just journey with them as somebody who's got a little bit more life experience, and just be available to them to listen and answer as they can, or just reflect back to them and help them find their own answer. Yes.
Years ago, I was in the secret. I was in the secret program, and I had a young lady whose father was in EFM with me, and so and she had problems. And in that program, Kyla, who sings in our choir, Kyla was one of the 9th graders there, and I got a chance to know Kyla, and really she was such a remarkable young lady. She took to that young lady and opened up doors when some of the other kids had to learn how to get along. And of course, Mimi was in charge, and so she was able to bring the kids together. But the Seeker program is a wonderful place for you to get involved, because it helps you know young people, because you get to know more than the person that you're representing. And so I just had to add that.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great plug. So if anybody is interested in being a faith partner, please let Jonathan or myself know. We would be happy to talk with you and see if that's a good fit. So I want to just encourage us to continue to think about ways that we can be more intentional in our parish here about intergenerational community and doing more. Oh.
Clergy are always putting in plugs, right? So our 2026 annual campaign will be kicking off in October, and one of the components of it is that we are asking some of our teens and more phone-savvy members of that younger generation to approach some of the more advanced generations. I'm sure you're plenty phone savvy, but nonetheless, to approach on the lawn and just do short, quick videos. What is walking in love, which is the theme of the 2026 campaign? What does walking in love look like or mean for you? And so I just put in this plug that if you're on the lawn and you see some teenagers walking around with their cell phone, please do not go like this. But please, because it's a bold thing for them to come up and say, hey, can I ask you this question? Would you please be receptive, warm, welcoming? Because that little intergenerational moment is part of planting the seeds of legacy. So just another plug for coming attractions.
All right, so I'm going to have Susan close us out.
Thank you, and thank you to our amazing panel for the preparation, the work they did. Also, one other note, I think the only thing we missed was Amanda introducing herself to everyone and to the folks streaming. So in case you do not know this amazing human, Amanda is our Director of Children, Youth, and Family. She's been at this work for only 9 months. And the renewal and renaissance of our Children, Youth, and Family program under her leadership, it cannot be overstated. So thank you for that. Thank you for your faithfulness. And thank you, God, for Amanda. And also, nice segue here, let's close with prayer and thanks for grandparents. God dwells in you. Holy God, we give you thanks for the gift of grandparents, for their abundant stories that connect us to our past, teaching us about resilience, love, and compassion, for the lessons we inherit from them that serve as legacies we carry forward into our future as we strive to align our lives with the values they impart. We pray that you soothe their hearts in times of worry and let them feel the warmth of the love and the gratitude we have for the joy they bring to our lives. Help us to be present with them, to listen to their voices, and to treasure the moments we share together. May our bonds be strengthened, and may we continue to learn from their experiences as they illuminate our path as we grow together into God's future. Amen. Amen. You've been a great audience. One quick commercial. We will not have Faith and Formation Hour at 9 o'clock for the next 2 weeks because we have Homecoming and then Celebration of Ministries. But we'll be back on September 28th, where we'll be launching our fall program with looking ahead at just work with me here, the election cycle, what it means to put faith into action during the election cycle, what we